This training is funded by the New Mexico Judiciary and a grant from the State Justice Institute.
I am New Mexico Supreme Court Justice Patricio Serna, and I am very pleased to welcome you to this language access training opportunity. Simply stated, language access means that individuals who do not speak or understand English, deaf individuals, or those who are limited or non-English speaking are afforded the same rights as anyone else who has contact with the New Mexico judicial system. This is a fundamental issue of basic fairness to all. We cannot allow language to be a barrier to justice. It is often repeated that justice is blind. Our duty is to ensure that she is also multilingual. The following video has been designed to provide all judicial employees with a clear understanding of the importance of language access for all individuals who come before the courts or are involved in the judicial system and your role in ensuring this access. New Mexico has long been a bilingual state and has now become a multilingual state where everyone has a right to equal access to justice regardless of their English proficiency. This is a strong New Mexico judicial tradition, and you and I are responsible for carrying this tradition forward. I hope you will take this training as seriously as the New Mexico Supreme Court does. You, as do all judicial employees, have a responsibility to ensure that those who do not speak or understand English are afforded the same rights and privileges as those who speak and understand English. Thank you. Your participation and involvement in providing language access to all individuals engaged with the judicial system is deeply appreciated. Please always remember that language access is equal access to justice. Thank you.
I'm an American citizen.
你是先杀后奸，还是先奸后杀？
Does he understand me? I want to talk to my embassy.
他要进使馆。
Please translate this. I would like to see an attorney.
Ebben a videóban felkérjük Önt, hogy képzelje el magát egy idegen országban, ahol a sors úgy hozza, hogy hirtelen egy bonyolult jogi helyzetbe kerül, amit nem ért meg. Úgy tűnik, hogy valami illegális dologgal vádolják, de ön nem érti a nyelvüket. Ön aggódik. Mi is lenne egy ilyen érzés? Mert valóban ilyent éreznek azok, akik nem tudnak angolul, vagy pedig süketek, és valahogyan kapcsolatba kerülnek az új mexikói igazságügyi rendszerrel.
And I signed this statement, assuming that it was just a Thai translation of what I said. But these aren't my words.
Ez a tréning videó összefoglalja a képzési anyagokat és leckéket, és a mindennapi életből vett példákkal illusztrálja, hogy milyen problémák keletkeznek, ha a mi igazságügyi rendszerünk nem biztosít tolmácsolási lehetőségeket.
You're saying?
I don't speak your damn language.
I don't hear. I lost the sound. I can't hear anything.
Pada waktu subuh esok seperti yang dijadualkan.
What is he saying?
So are you ready to go? Probably not. The language you just heard is Hungarian. Hungarian is a Uralic language in the Ugric language group, distantly related to Finnish, Estonian, and a number of other minority languages spoken in the Baltic states of Eastern Europe. Here is what you could not understand.
I'm an American citizen.
你是先杀后奸，还是先奸后杀？
Does he understand me? I want to talk to my embassy.
他要进使馆。
Please translate this. I would like to see an attorney.
During the course of this video, we ask you to imagine yourself in another country, where through some twist of fate you are suddenly involved in a difficult legal situation that you don't understand.
What is he saying?
You appear to be accused of something illegal and are being asked questions in a language you don't understand.
What did that prosecutor say? Oh, it's no important.
You are worried. What would that feel like? That is how non-English speaking and deaf individuals often feel when they come into contact with the New Mexico judicial system.
And I signed this statement assuming that it was just a Thai translation of what I said. But these aren't my words.
This training video addresses these issues by incorporating information and training lessons along with real-life examples of problems created when an appropriate language access is not provided in our justice system.
You sign.
I don't speak your damn language.
I don't hear. I lost the sound. I can't hear anything.
Pada waktu subuh esok seperti yang dijadwalkan.
What is he saying?
So, are you ready to go now? All right. When you finish watching this video, you will understand the specific role of certified interpreters and language access specialists. You will be aware of the different modes of interpreting and the difference between translations and interpreting. You will know what your role as a judicial employee is in ensuring language access. New Mexico is a majority-minority state, as some like to say. The statistics clearly demonstrate the diversity of New Mexico, where almost 40% of our residents speak a language other than English when they go home. We must also factor in New Mexico's deaf and hard of hearing community, which is estimated at over 250,000 residents, or about 12% of our state's population. These figures describe the cultural richness of our state and also an obvious mandate for ensuring all non-English speaking and deaf and hard of hearing individuals have access to justice through appropriate language access services. As another example of our state's cultural richness and a state history lesson, the following is the first reported opinion from the courts, reflecting the importance of language access. This was written in 1881, when the court recognized the importance of having non-English speaking individuals serve on juries. Territory of New Mexico versus Romin, 1881, first reported opinion.
In all counties where the jury contains members representing each language, or where persons speaking each are before the court, all the proceedings are translated by a sworn interpreter, who is a court officer, into the other language from that in which they originally take place.
This eventually led to New Mexico incorporating the right of non-English speaking individuals to serve on juries, as it wrote its constitution in 1911. New Mexico is the only state in the Union that incorporated this right in its constitution. The legislation that is the foundation for the right to language access is Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This landmark legislation prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and natural origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. While the original legislation did not specifically address language access, a series of court cases, including cases before the United States Supreme Court, have affirmed that denying language access to limited English proficient individuals is a form of prohibited discrimination. The Americans with Disabilities Act preserves these rights for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. In 2000, President Bill Clinton re-emphasized the importance of language access services for agencies receiving federal funds when he issued Executive Order 13166. This order confirmed the federal government's responsibility in providing services to LEP individuals. In August 2010, the Department of Justice, under the Obama administration, sent letters of notice to all agencies and departments receiving federal funds, informing them that they must have demonstrated language access plans and services or risk losing federal funding. Violations of Title VI may result in investigations by the Department of Justice and sanctions against the agency. One project in San Francisco lost over $70 million in federal funding for failing to meet Title VI requirements. There are several state courts undergoing compliance audits for failure to meet Title VI requirements. This is a true story of a woman from Central America living in a large Midwestern city who, because of inappropriate language access services, lost her children. It started when the woman's daughter was diagnosed with a serious medical condition. The hospital provided the woman with a Spanish interpreter. The problem was that the woman spoke a Mayan Spanish dialect and didn't understand the instructions in Spanish of how to care for her child. This led to charges of medical neglect because the woman didn't understand the care required by her daughter's doctor. In court, the woman was again provided a Spanish interpreter and again didn't understand the process of what was happening. This resulted in the termination of her parental rights. It took over 3 years with the assistance of an appropriate interpreter before the woman was able to regain the custody of her 2 children. There are 3 forms of interpretation that interpreters employ in a courtroom setting. The first is simultaneous interpretation.
I'd like to start with you giving us a little bit of your educational background.
I did my undergrad and my MBA at NIDA University.
Okay, and how about your employment background?
Prior to this, I was assistant to...
Using Spanish as an example, simultaneous interpretation is when the interpreter speaks in Spanish, the target language, while listening to someone speak in English, the source language. This type of interpretation is concurrent with what is being spoken, and the interpreter being responsible for interpreting word for word. The interpreter is also responsible for maintaining the intent and tone of what is being said and repeating the words and phrases expressed, no matter how vulgar or graphic they might be. In sign language, simultaneous interpreting, the purpose is the same, but the mode sign versus verbal is the only difference. Consecutive interpretation occurs when an interpreter listens to a phrase or statement and then repeats what has been said in the target language. This is a challenge for interpreters who have to remember what was said in addition to interpreting what was said. Interpreters will sometimes take notes to assist them with consecutive interpreting. Sight interpreting or translation occurs when an interpreter is given a document in one language and translates it into the target language. In these situations, it is best if interpreters can have the documents in advance so they can research any unfamiliar or technical terms. Translation is written and is simply taking a document in one language and writing it in another language. It is clear that certified court interpreters are essential to access to justice for limited English proficient and deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Court interpreters must pass a series of difficult tests to become certified interpreters. They have a thorough knowledge of court processes and the role of interpreters in the courts. In many of our courts, bilingual employees are called upon to interpret for limited English proficient individuals. These employees now have the opportunity and are encouraged to enroll in the New Mexico Center for Language Access, an online certificate program through the University of New Mexico at Los Alamos. This program is designed to give bilingual employees the background to understand their role and responsibility in providing language access services, emphasizing the ethical responsibilities of someone who is interpreting in a judicial setting. Employees successfully completing the program may be eligible for a salary increase. Here is another true life story that took place in a large city in the northwestern United States. On a Friday afternoon, a Korean woman attempted to get a restraining order against her increasingly abusive husband. The court office the woman went to did not have adequate language access services and was unable to understand her request. She was unable to express her fear and concerns and was told to come back on Monday. She never made it through the weekend. Her husband was arrested for her murder and is now serving time in prison. You might think this would never happen in New Mexico, but it could, and the Administrative Office of the Courts wants to make sure every judicial employee has the tools necessary to ensure something like this doesn't happen here. Next are the language access services and resources the New Mexico Administrative Office of the Courts has to offer limited English proficient and deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Do you wonder what Artie was saying? Do you know what will happen next? Now you have an idea of what it is like for a hard of hearing or deaf person seeking assistance. Let's listen to what Mr. Pepin had to say.
I am Artie Pepin, the Director of the Administrative Office of the Courts, or AOC. Thank you for taking this opportunity as an employee of the New Mexico Judiciary to understand how important it is to provide appropriate language access services to all those who need our services. The AOC certifies interpreters and works with the New Mexico Center for Language Access to qualify both justice system interpreters and language access specialists. Some of you may have already completed these training programs. It is AOC's job to help you find appropriate interpreters or language access specialists when you need them, and in most cases, AOC is responsible for paying for these services. Each state court has also received language access packets, which include I Speak cards that have the words I speak in over 60 different languages and allow an individual seeking service to identify their native language. The language access packets also include a step-by-step process for locating a certified court interpreter, as well as a language line service, which provides immediate access to appropriate language services when needed, for example, at the clerk's window. As you complete this training video, you will recognize the essential role that all judicial employees play in providing access to justice through appropriate language access services. Remember, AOC is available to answer your questions and help you identify the resources you need. The following scenarios highlight just some of the right and wrong ways to fulfill your role in providing language access. Each of these scenarios is from a real-life event. Thank you for giving them your attention.
In this scene, a woman approaches the clerk's window with her son and attempts to communicate with the clerk. It is apparent there is a language issue and the clerk is uncertain as to what the woman needs or is asking. The clerk and woman are both frustrated, as are the people behind her who are in line. At one point, the clerk engages the woman's son, who begins interpreting for his mother. The son looks confused and uncomfortable. This is an example of poor language access services. A young person unfamiliar with the judicial system shouldn't be called upon to understand legal processes and terms. In this scene, a woman arrives at the clerk's window, unable to communicate in English. The woman becomes frustrated and at one point turns to her son to help her understand. The clerk intervenes and with a hand gesture asks the woman to wait. She returns with a fellow judicial employee who has been trained as language access specialist through the New Mexico Center for Language Access. The language access specialist is a bilingual employee who has been trained to understand the legal and ethical ramifications of assisting someone who does not speak or understand English. The woman is visibly relieved and is quickly and professionally assisted with her question. In the next scene, a person comes to the window alone and speaks in a language that is unusual and unfamiliar. The clerk becomes frustrated and in a series of gestures and signs clearly indicates she can't help the individual, finally mouthing the words, "Go get someone who can speak English," and sends the person away. The woman leaves and returns with a friend, relative, who proceeds to interpret for her. This is a clear violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In addition to being a violation, the clerk has inadvertently told the individual to find someone to interpret for her who is not trained and may not be truly bilingual. In this situation, the person is speaking Thai, a language unknown to the clerk. This time, though, the clerk gives the client an "I speak" booklet. The individual looks through the pages and finds Thai. She points to her native language and shows it to the clerk. The clerk nods in understanding and proceeds to use the language line to obtain the services of a Thai interpreter. The clerk places her phone on speaker and within minutes is able to understand and assist the Thai individual. Every district, magistrate, and metropolitan court in New Mexico has language access packets. These packets include "I speak" cards with the words "I speak" in over 60 languages. These cards will help an individual identify his or her native language. Once the judicial employee knows the language the individual is speaking, they will be able to call a listed telephonic interpreting service to communicate with the client. The packets also include step-by-step instructions on how to schedule a certified interpreter when that is necessary. In addition, each court will have a sign posted in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Navajo, explaining an individual's right to an interpreter. Judicial employees on every level are responsible for appropriate language services. You are the key to language access and access to justice for deaf and hard of hearing and limited English proficient court customers. We know that providing language access isn't always easy. You won't always have the time it takes. You may not be able to locate the resource you need. If you are faced with a situation and you don't know what to do or who to call, whether you need a certified interpreter, a justice system interpreter, or a language access specialist, call the AOC. Together, we are the New Mexico judiciary. We carry forward the tradition of our proud multilingual state and its commitment to equal access to justice.
I'm Charles Daniels. I currently have the privilege of serving as Chief Justice of the New Mexico Supreme Court. I take a lot of pride in being part of a state Supreme Court that has such a high regard for access to justice. Our court recognizes that language access is a key component of the essential right of access to justice that's established by the Constitution of both the United States and of the state of New Mexico. This video was developed to provide you with a deeper understanding of the importance of providing meaningful language access services and a fundamental understanding of your role in providing adequate language access. We've seen what can happen when these services are not provided. Throughout New Mexico's history, we as citizens and as officials of our justice system have worked hard to ensure that every person, regardless of their backgrounds or the circumstances, has meaningful access to justice, that they have a right to be heard, that they have a right to understand what is going on. To deny anyone access to justice because they don't speak English or understand English is something we simply cannot allow. You and I have an obligation, a moral responsibility, and a legal mandate to provide adequate language services to all those who do not speak or understand English. I would like to leave you with a thought from Isabel Framer, past chair of the National Association of Judicial Interpreters. She said, "Without communication, nothing can happen. Let's take care to communicate well and to get our messages across to those among us who may not yet speak English well. And remember, having an incompetent interpreter is tantamount to having no interpreter at all. Those are important words for us to remember. Our sincere thanks to you for participating in this language access training and for your dedicated service to New Mexico's citizens and New Mexico's justice system. Thank you.